Son of a... Well, look who it is. It's Adam Levin and Marcus DePaula.
What up? What up, team?
AKA the Podcast Club.
That's
What's
right.
up?
What's up? Here we are.
We're back.
Back at it.
Talking about podcasts.
This is the first episode, so we're not
Just
technically
starting.
back. Yeah, that's right.
So the other two were just rehearsl.
Yeah, I reviewed the tapes and I had to, pull an executive
don't blame
decision.
Oh my God, I have to do all that back again? Man,
I know.
I thought I
know,
nailed it.
There was such
You're gonna
gold
have to-
in there.
Yeah, you're gonna have to kick your equipment loose and
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Well, cool.
it's cool.
Lots
It's
of
cool.
Then there's lots to talk about then.
That's right. And speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Podcast Club. This is a podcast about podcasts and podcasting and podcasters and podcast equipment and podcast editing software and our love for podcasts, basically. So thank you for joining us on this show. Today we're going to talk about the crazy thing with Libsyn's Chinese investors because... Hello, Lifetime movie. Let's get this party started.
Seriously.
Dude, Adam, are you aware?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Right.
Inform me.
He's busy selling gear.
Yeah, I'm over here just playing with microphones. What are you guys talking about?
Okay, so check this out. So, Libsyn, one of the very popular, popular podcast hosts.
Tell people what Libsyn is.
For the listeners at home. So, when you have a podcast, you can host it on Podbean, Libsyn, Buzzsprout. There's a million, not Anchor.
Right.
Not Anchor. And so there's a lot of different options. And Podbean and Libsyn are like the OGs, right? I think they've been around like the longest, Podbean. They all offer the same thing, except Libsyn's user interfaces from 1992. And it's difficult for anyone to navigate, even if you just used it the day before. It's just not intuitive whatsoever. But yeah, man, they're a pretty big company. So this huge article came out in the Podcast Business Journal, I believe, and talking about Libsyn has this group of Chinese investors that are holding 27% of the company shares. That, long story short, it was just a giant Ponzi scheme, and all of them are in Chinese prison right now.
Yeah.
But they're holding... True story.
It is.
They're holding all the...
goes deep.
And listen, I've been a pretty big critic of like Libsyn just because I had a bad experience with them personally, but like I recognize they offer a good product. I just think they're too expensive, and I didn't appreciate the way they communicated with me, but I'm not going to say that they communicate with all women that way. They certainly have some great partnerships with women whom I respect, right? So I'm not going to roll them under the bus, but this one was just so good to pass up. Like, how did this even go down? Like, where did they meet these Chinese Ponzi schemers in the first place? Like, where did this all go down? You know what I mean? Like, they were hanging out at a bar in Hong Kong. Like, someone explain how this transaction was even initiated.
Yeah, and apparently, like they've been invested in Libsyn for years, right?
Yeah, long term.
It's not like they just bought the stock like this past couple of years or something. It's been like 12 years or something like that.
Well, yeah.
Were they in prison? Were they in prison when they bought into it, or are they recently in prison now? Tell me more.
No, they weren't in prison at first.
Are they in prison because of their involvement with Libsyn?
No, but they had this like whole scheme, and it was like bad electronics or fake electronics, something. And so I guess it was
fraud.
Massive fraud. So these guys presented themselves as investors, and they had this huge company, but it wasn't really a huge company at all. And they put up some money, but and one of my biggest complaints about Libsyn is that they're so expensive. But now I totally understand why, man. They're trying to pitching on the books, you know what I mean? Those guys in jail, they got to eat, you know what I'm saying? It's expensive to have your business partners in jail, I would imagine.
I would imagine.
I'm curious why there's not more news outlets writing about this, because the only article I found was on Inside Radio. Like, it's not on Bloomberg. That's what like our Pod News linked to.
It was
And
it Pod News?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
and
Pod News.
and some other people also linked to it, but this, like, I searched and this is the only story, like, and there's like no byline on the story, so I'm like, okay.
Well,
Is
and we
this-
haven't heard from Libsyn being like, not true. So
Right.
I'm just gonna say,
Well, you remember what happened last year?
vaguely.
Educate me.
So
I know
last-
nothing.
Last
I don't
year, and I had
remember
to go-
much of last year, to be honest. But
It's all a blur, right?
like 87%. Yeah.
Not because of COVID, right? No, I'm just kidding.
No, yeah, pre-COVID.
No, in October last year, apparently their CFO got fired or something, or sued because he did something also that was not kosher. I don't know. Like, I didn't. It was hard to like. I don't remember the exact story, but there's something going on, and the board basically fired him, and they had to sue him to get him out, and they restructured all that stuff, and nobody talked about it. Like, this is one of the major hosting platforms in the podcast space, not just the hosting platforms. Their team are leaders in the community. Like, Rob is on the board for the new academy and all this stuff, and it
Right.
like I have a lot of respect for everybody there and for their service. I have clients on their service.
Right.
Like you said, the user interface is archaic.
Right.
But you know, they are leaders in the industry, and it when I read that last year, it worried me. Okay, what are they doing over there? And do I need to be worried about, like, do I need to be worried for my clients? Do I need to be worried for my podcasts? You know, what does it mean for me?
It's interesting, right? Because, you know, maybe the podcast space is so insulated right now that it hasn't reached out, because all the news is like mergers and acquisitions of like the sexy stuff, right? Like
Right.
Spotify out here buying every company that moves, and, you know, who's getting signed, and
The fake awards at iHeart.
Right, like all of that stuff. The Spotify year in review, it just, you know, dominated the news feed. But, you know, I think it's just not as interesting to people, right? It's not as sexy, and like people don't really think about like who's hosting the podcast, you know, because that's just, yeah, you know, it definitely makes you wonder, like, okay, well, what's going on with the data that they've collected, and like, you know, no disrespect, Libsyn, I've made a bunch of bad business decisions too, but it just sounds like you guys have been on a pretty bad streak. You know what I'm saying? It might be time to bring in a mentor or two, you know?
Yeah, and it's not like all businesses run into problems. Like, I totally understand that. I don't blame them for that. The problem I have that I'm losing trust in them is the fact that they're not letting us know what's going on.
The real deal.
Yeah. There's no press releases. They have their own podcast, and I know it's like kind of embarrassing, but I don't know. Trust is a big thing for me.
I can respect that. I mean, that's a very valid point. Maybe the guy that got rid of last year is the guy who was in bed with the Chinese Ponzi guys. Maybe it's
a good point.
I don't know.
So for the person that doesn't know much about podcast hosting platforms, like, what should one consider when looking at a podcast? Like, you might not know if they have investors in Chinese jails, but what else am I looking at? Like, what matters, business or otherwise? Like, it's a good point. Like, are they going to be around next year? If I'm going to host my podcasts on this platform, like, I don't want to have to deal with worrying about it. It's like, Libsyn's a big one. Who are the other big players, and what should people be considering when we're talking about podcast hosting platforms?
I mean, well, it's like a double-edged sword with price, right? Like, I don't think price should be your number one concern, which is what leans everybody towards Anchor, because they're like, it's free. It's like, no, man, there's no free lunch. Like, if it's free, it's not free. There's nothing in life is free. You're giving up something, right? But then at the same time, you know, like Libsyn, I have my podcast on there. I uploaded a video every week, and it was partially my error, because even though it's like unlimited video, you're not actually supposed to upload video. I'm still a little fuzzy about that, but I got like $170 bill for the month.
Whoa.
And I was like, it is 2019, fellas. Like, I am not paying you $170 to host 4 videos. You know what I mean? Like, what happened here? So for me, price on that end of the pendulum swing was definitely a deal breaker, you know? But I think the most important thing is just longevity. And like Buzzsprout, I've never used them, but I hear really great things about them. And my very first podcast was with Podbean, and that was like 15 years ago or something, man. Like, and so I think that has value. And then anybody who's like, the biggest red flag for me is if they're claiming that they do something special, that's an indication they don't. All RSS feeds work the exact same. It's just a matter of how much data they're going to give you about yours. That's really the only thing that separates these companies.
So this is really like cloud storage specific to podcasting?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It holds the audio files and basically lets them play them various places.
Right.
Right.
And the other important thing too that differentiates the service actually is the analytics. And that's something too that they're trying to standardize, not just for the sake of them being able to sell a decent service, but also because some people were kind of scamming advertisers by getting bots to get just download their podcasts and stuff. And so now they've partnered with IAB, and IAB is certifying the International Association of Broadcasters, that covers all the radio and TV and everything. So, there's a handful of services that are IAB certified, and more are getting that. And that's what I look for because to me, it's not necessarily about the IAB certification itself. It's the fact that they're going to that effort to comply with the industry standards. That says a lot to me.
So the platforms, they aggregate the data or the analytics from, like, if you're on Spotify or Apple or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the best of the hosts will aggregate that data and tell you you're getting this much from Apple, you're getting this much from Spotify, you're seeing all these numbers, this many unique streams and downloads and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's really tricky because, and this is where the whole podcast analytics game is, they're trying to essentially play catch up, because all you can track right now with podcasts is downloads. And so I have an iPhone, I have a Mac, I have an iPad, I have an Apple Watch. My wife has multiple devices as well. So if she happens to be logged into my account, I could technically download the same episode like 8 times, but it's just one person. So the IAB certification, I have no idea how it works, but I would assume that it looks at IP addresses, and you can kind of track devices and stuff. There's a whole privacy issue, which is a whole thing, which I know that Marco Arment at Overcast is a big stickler about, which I appreciate. And all that stuff. So it's really, really complicated. And so to me, if they're going to that effort, that means they're trying, thinking about not just me, but also potential advertisers.
Which I respect. But did you hear the drama about the IAB?
No.
Oh, yeah. So this is so good. So Bryan Barletta from Sounds Profitable, which is the newsletter that gets put out by Pod News.
Yeah.
He just put out this thing, it's called the IAB measurement version 2.1, and it's everything you need to know. And basically what he's kind of concluding is that the IAB is a lot like the mafia, because apparently I'm making
Chinese
that part
prisons.
up. I know,
mafia,
it's so good. It's
the
like you
podcast world.
I know.
Ain't got nothing on Hollywood.
And the rest of the podcast world is like big iceberg.
Dude, seriously. Okay, so IAB, right? And it's all about uniform data, making sure nobody's scamming the system. But the IAB, it's like for Sounds Profitable, which is a newsletter, to be a member, it would be $5,000 for the first year, and then $10,000 for the next year. And then I know, it gets crazy. And then if you are let's see, for hosting platforms, it's tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. What do you get with that? A 21-page document that reads like a pleading list of suggestions rather than any firm requirements. So it sounds like while the IAB is intended to be a bit of a watchdog, it seems to me like it's a little bit more like a Jimmy Hoffa type of operation, because there's not actually a certification. It's just more of an IAB membership from the sound of it. So he put together this 21-page document that's open for like peer review and commentary. So I'll make sure to link it in the show description. It's pretty fascinating though, man. I was, it's wild west out here, man.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, podcasting is still like it's massive, but it's still in its infancy. Like there's no, it's not like radio, it's not like TV where there's like like for better or for worse, there's a structure to it. This is Wild West,
which is both good and bad.
Which is good and bad. I mean, that's part of the charm of a podcast, is that there's no gatekeeper. I think, Molly, that was like one of the first things that I learned from you. Is just like, that's the beauty of podcasting, is you can talk about whatever the hell you want to talk about. There ain't no one, going to moderate your podcast.
Yeah.
But there ain't no one moderating the business side of your podcast.
The part that needs to, because I mean, that you could potentially scam advertisers out of, if I got 5 million downloads, it's from some bot in Russia or something,
But then someone's like, hey man, give me $200,000 a year and I'll tell them that your numbers are good.
Right. And it's
which
basically
is what
a
I'm
marketing
hearing.
stamp. Like, okay, I'm IAB certified, I'm safe.
So what I'm hearing is we need to form a IAB certification company.
Oversight committee.
That's right. So it's going to cost IAB $500,000. I feel like that's a year. I think that's reasonable.
I think so. Wow. Absolutely.
I know, man. Wow. Maybe we went the wrong route with equipment, Adam. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we should have aimed higher.
Seriously.
Damn it.
Damn.
Well, I hope that there's more news about this stuff, because, this stuff is scary. I mean, you have these guys making tons of money off this stuff and behind the scenes, and we're just here trying to make people's ears happy,
Well, not to be that guy, but let's just, it is what it is. A bunch of white dudes making money behind the doors, and people don't even know the doors are there yet. Like, that's it's the most American thing ever, isn't it, fellas?
Yeah,
that's it.
I mean, by the time everybody else figures out what they did,
it's way too late.
Yeah,
they'll be in a Chinese prison with their counterpart. I'm not saying Libsyn needs to go to prison. I'm just a bad joke. I'm just saying.
And before we wrap up this topic about Libsyn, Rob, one of the Robs, I can never keep track of which one's which. He lives here in Nashville now, and he's on the Nashville Podcasters Facebook group. And I had mentioned how much I don't like the interface and how I don't recommend Libsyn because the interface is so bad. And he said that they have been working for a while now on the new interface. It's in beta. I'm like, well, when is it coming out? And he said, hopefully soon. Like,
as soon as they dump those Chinese investors, that's when it's coming out, and they get an infusion of cash, and they're like, let's do this.
Well, being so big, it's got to be quite an undertaking to change the architecture of something that so many people bank on.
I bet.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Stressful.
Like, exactly.
Why do you think like the government still runs on like MS-DOS machines or whatever? Like, because you change one switch and the world shuts down. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah. It is a
and
big deal.
They probably got the biggest user base to kind of. So in that regard, it's like at least they're taking their time with it, but also like
they're behind the 8 ball at this point.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Catch up. Yeah,
that's one thing I do like about Podbean. Like, they're constantly coming up with upgrades and stuff. Like, there's a distribution tab now where like all the platforms are on the back end of Podbean, and you can manually submit your podcast to them instead of having to Google, how do I submit to iTunes? How do I submit to Spotify?
Yeah.
How do I submit? I mean, not that that's like so hard, you know what I mean? But still, like, it's nice that it's inside of there. And then when it's done, it has a check mark, and then you can easily pop back in there and grab that link. So I mean, people are thinking about things.
That's
right?
value.
So it is.
That's cool. That's interesting. I didn't know
For
that.
Sure. Yeah. So there you go. That's our RSS like news of the day right there, man. Good stuff.
Man,
though.
Current events.
Deep.
I know.
That is deep stuff.
Seriously.
Well, talking about deep stuff,
yeah,
we're going to talk about more software now. Yeah?
Yes. Well, We're talking about software you install on your computer as opposed to software as a service, which is what Libsyn is technically, the cloud service.
So
but yes, software.
what do we got? Where are we going?
Well, one of the questions as a audio engineer that I get the most from new podcasters especially, but anybody who's like, "Ooh, you're an audio engineer, what software should I get?" And so I figured that would be a good topic for us to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been pretty interested. In selling the equipment, my job stops normally after the goods are delivered and I get them to make sound that they can hear themselves through their headphones. They're like, oh yeah, I'm out after that. And in the music world, like I know some things about some of the audio recording platforms, but not the most popular ones for podcasting.
Right.
And I've seen some other ones out there that are pretty interesting. So I mean, I know that the main audio recording platforms can be used for podcasting, but are they the best for podcasting?
Exactly. Absolutely. And what does your team use, Molly?
Well, we started off with Reaper. Like we were
Right.
using Reaper to like record all the sessions, and that worked.
Straight up audio recording studio stuff.
Yeah.
And it worked great. We were using the Persona 16, Persona's Live 16 channel board that we got from Chuck Levins, and we used Reaper and we dialed in all the different channels. Graham from The Infinite Goodness came over and got us all set up, and we were great. And then from there, my engineer was a music producer, so I believe she was using Pro Tool. Is that right? Or
yes, she was. I remember.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we would record with Reaper, but then use Pro Tools. And then when Matt came on board, he was not a music producer. He started, editing audio as a podcast producer.
Cool.
So I think he was using, I don't know, Audition or Audacity.
He's using Audition now because that's what we're like. I tried to work with him on coming up with a template and stuff, and we talked about plugins and nerded out a little bit. So yeah, Adobe Audition. Yeah, which is confusing because it sounds like Audacity, and I definitely get those two mixed up in my mind. They are definitely different.
So
sure.
what are I don't record anything at all. I know some of these names, and all I can tell people is, yeah, I've heard that. That's probably a good one to try right here. That's used by a lot of people. So Marcus, what do you probably had the most access to the most platforms, both in audio and in podcasting. What are your top picks and why? What are you using?
My top pick, what I'm using these days, is Logic Pro X or Logic Pro 10, however you want to call it. I am an Apple nerd. If you are a Windows user, you're kind of out of luck with Logic because it's Mac only. But I like using Logic because it's a one-time cost of $200. There's no subscription. It does everything that I would want it to do. Like it does everything. Like I can make music on it. I can record podcast, and they think a lot more about the user interface stuff because it's like a professional version of GarageBand, which is a free app that comes on all the Macs, which I actually don't like. I have some clients that use it, but it's actually, they try to make it easy, but it's actually confusing.
It's super clunky.
Yes. And Logic is not clunky, but it can do so much. You have to know where to go. And all these apps, they're very intimidating and they can be overwhelming, especially to new users. And that's why I feel like a lot of people just start with Audacity, which is the free open source app, and they just kind of stick with it. Like my friend David Hooper, he loves his Audacity, and Steve Stewart, I know he's an Audacity guy, and I nothing against Audacity, like they have what works for them, but it is not professional software. And I do know professional podcasters that get paid to make podcasts are using Audacity, but my threshold for professional software, and it's not just software that professionals use, it is. So
is it like the OBS of like soft, like it's like pro, but like it's not super clean, but like it definitely gets the job done?
It does not definitely get the job done. It gets podcasting job done. If you want to record a sound and maybe have two people talking and maybe lay some music and then do some minimal editing, it gets the job done. And I know a lot of people that go crazy with it and do very fancy edits, but this is why I do not use Audacity. And it is because it is destructive.
Oh no.
Every time you make an edit in the software, you actually have to render it.
FM.
The line for me with professional software is not that professionals use it, it's reliability. And with Audacity, not only is it fairly glitchy, it's open source software, so it's a bunch of volunteers as a group that are managing it, and it's kind of late to be renewed. Like when there was a problem when Mac OS updated last year where it didn't work and everybody was freaking out that used it, and there are a lot of people that use it.
Oh yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, I saw it all
That
in the
happens
groups.
with every software
It
and
does.
Mac operates. I'm dealing with that right now with the new whatever Big Sur,
yeah.
And the new chips too.
Yep. Yeah. And that's it. It is like always you have to like when you're dealing with any kind of media editing software, you always want to wait and not update immediately with your operating system, not just with Mac OS, but with Windows too.
But mostly with Mac.
Yeah. Especially if you're using the most complex software like Pro Tools, which is also fairly glitchy.
Yeah.
Pro Tools is like the proest of audio apps because that's kind of the industry standard. I used to work for a dealer of Pro Tools, and it caused so many problems that I vowed never to use it for myself. And I have a friend that full time he helps musicians here in town. Like Adam, you were saying, you just hand this stuff over and you never hear from him again. They call my friend to help them when they have software problems.
Pro Tools is I mean any recording software has its quirks, but Pro Tools definitely. If you need to go like if you need the spaceship of recording platforms, like Pro Tools is it because it is a spaceship, but also because it's permeated the recording world so much that it's earned its place as the industry standard because everybody uses it.
Yes,
it was the first.
Sound Tools, it was one of the first early.
So like
in the late 90s.
It's been around long enough, and they've certainly they've come up. I mean, it's not bad software. It's just a bear when it comes to updating, and they know what they have, and they have maximum exposure.
Right.
And so if you want to play with others and play nicely with others and send files to other recording engineers or other people, chances are everyone's familiar with Pro Tools. And if you have something else, you're finding a way to make it work with Pro Tools.
Yes. They also
that's the key.
Yeah, and they also allow you to do like all these keyboard shortcuts and stuff. And so the real pros like barely use a mouse. Like their hands are on the keyboard and all that. And it's also the industry standard for film and TV. So and it's owned by Avid now, which has a lot of the software that the film and TV industry uses for editing the video and film.
They've run a successful business in getting into all the right places.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And so there's a good reason for it. I mean, there's something to be said for, making it work, and there's something to be said for using what everyone else uses. And if you were a creative musician type, I'd say, go ahead and go do and be and find that weird guitar that's going to define your sound or be creative with it. But then when you're coming in and doing something that is pretty boilerplate, like you need to sound good on a specified set of mediums. You want it to be repeatable, and you want it to be expected. You don't. I mean, in some ways you can get creative and have some fun with it and please some people, but in other regards, you don't want to be too outlandish and wild. You want to have something that's going to kind of fit the format.
And you don't want it to be so difficult that you're spending all your energy just trying to make a sound or to record a sound instead of actually making content, whether it's spoken word or music or whatever. So that's the other thing. And Pro Tools is definitely, once you learn it, you can, like my friends that do it, like they're editing while they're tracking drums, they're editing certain things and stuff. And it's crazy.
Now, there are other ones out there for podcasting that are quite popular.
Yeah, like Hindenburg. I hear a lot about Hindenburg.
If I were starting over today and I had never worked on any DAW, which is the abbreviation. Some people say DAW. I don't like saying
No.
DAW. I think it sounds goofy, so I spell it out. But it's Digital Audio Workstation is what that spells out. Is what the acronym is for. If I were starting again today, I would go with Hindenburg as a podcaster.
I feel like this is a spicy statement to make here, Marcus.
Yes.
So what does Hindenburg do that makes it premium for podcasting?
Hindenburg makes it freaking easy. So you don't, like I was talking about, you don't have to worry about the process of actually recording. It lets you just get to telling a story. And especially if you're doing some kind of a narrative podcast or like a news show where you've got segments and you're, cutting stuff together, basically the opposite type of podcast, what we're doing here, that's just a conversation and we just kind of publish the conversation up. If you have to do any kind of chopping and editing for the story and content, they have a really great story editing tools and almost like audio storyboarding where you can take clips and group them and label them and then drop them in at different, so it's easy. And I did like a documentary style podcast, and that's one of the hardest parts of editing a narrative podcast is keeping track of, okay, here's this interview, here's this narration, here's this part of the story, and then here's the, conclusion, all that stuff. And Hindenburg makes it easy. Plus, they have built in auto leveling for audio. So you drop an audio file, it automatically raises the loudness, not just the dB level, which we can get into that. We can nerd out about that at some point in the future. They make it so you don't have to think about stuff and make it easier to mix, make it easier to edit, like visually the way you edit and the fades and stuff. It's really cool the way they do it. It is, however, fairly expensive to get.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
How much are we talking here?
The Journalist Pro is what I would get because that includes their really awesome noise reduction plugin that works great. It's just one knob. You just turn it up if you need to reduce background noise. Right now, Hindenburg Journalist Pro is $375.
Own it?
Yes, but they do come out with new versions every once in a while, and you have to re-up when they come out with a new version. You have to buy it all over again. And there's a lot of the apps that do that. Like,
but that's not a bad model. $300 to own it. Like, that's kind of part of the course for a fully functional recording platform. You're either going to be paying such and such a month for forever, and as soon as you stop your toast, or you own it.
Yep.
Pro Tools, I think, is $5.99 for a perpetual license, which is the same thing. You own it until they decide to change, and then you have to pay for upgrades.
But now they also have a subscription model where you can pay $300 a year, I think.
Right, the annual subscription, or you can pay by month.
Right.
So there are different models, and it ends up, just a matter of how you want to pay it out.
Yep.
So if you were like a brand new podcaster and you never edited anything and you had this idea that you're going to do it all yourself, right? Which is a terrible idea, but whatever. We all got to start someplace. Which software would you recommend to somebody who's like has no previous experience with a DAW?
Just get an Anchor subscription for free and record it on your phone.
Marcus!
Totally kidding.
Delete it.
Edit that out. Cutting room floor.
No, that's the funny thing though. Is like people, I could just use my phone. I record it straight into Anchor and I publish it, and it's good. Please don't do that. That is not
good for torturing people.
Right. Nobody wants to listen to your hour-long talking about the last pair of shorts you bought or whatever it is so they talk about it.
Or at least make it sound good. I might listen to it, but it's got to sound good.
Yeah.
I'll say a lot of the I'll let you know what, Marcus, you finish what you're about to say, because you're about to drop the bomb.
I don't know if it's a bomb because it's an opinion, and this is the thing. This is a tough question because your like software preferences and how you work, workflows, production processes, it's different for everybody. And what works for me might not work for you. But I would suggest trying Reaper because it's free. Yeah. And it actually is a kick-ass program. That what my friend Chris Curran uses Reaper, and he is just as much an audio engineer as I am, just as much an audio nerd as I am, and that's what he chooses to use.
Not what I was expecting.
Reaper.
Gotcha.
Come
Wow.
on, feel the reaper.
Wowzers.
It's also a killer classic rock song.
Killer. In the gear and hardware gear side of things, I will say many devices that touch a computer come with a light version of something,
Yes.
which is nice to start with in a lot of ways. PreSonus interfaces come with their DAW,
Studio One, which is actually killer too.
It is really cool, and
I know one podcaster using it.
it's not the most popular, but it's like I think of all the most functional DAWs out there, aside from maybe Logic, it was created. No, it even was created after Logic. It's the newest platform to the mix.
Yes.
And so it benefits from that in that you're not updating old systems and trying to slowly upgrade from where it was to get it to where it is. They started in 2010.
Yep.
So they benefit from starting on a fresher ground level. More drag and drop, more, a better layout, imagine starting in 2010 and being able to take advantage of everything that's cool that's out there, as opposed to starting in the 70s, 80s, and starting with something and having to modify that to build up to where it is, instead of, we were talking about earlier with the other things, instead of, why Libsyn can't just blow up the platform and just completely just, here's everything new. You can't,
Right.
because there's so many things are woven into it. So same with Pro Tools. People that have Pro Tools expect that their stuff will, for the most part, translate. Same with Cubase, same with anything else. So I think there's a little bit that kind of benefits from that, and they're really affordable, and they have a good upgrade pathway.
Mhm.
And
Is this Reaper?
Studio One by PreSonus.
Studio One.
Yeah,
PreSonus.
yeah.
Studio One, and they're cool. They're cool people.
Yeah,
Baton
PreSonus is
Rouge
a good
and
company.
good company, good support staff, good. You have a problem, you actually call PreSonus in Baton Rouge, and they're there, and they'll help you twist knobs and work stuff out. So that's something to take into consideration too. Can't call Avid.
Right.
Well, you can. They're going to charge you for it.
Exactly. Even as a dealer, we had a really hard time getting any help from them.
But there's a case to be made. I mean, they've earned the right, and you're gonna work your butt off to make it work. But it works with everybody else that's doing real deal audio stuff.
I could tell you this: Avid and Pro Tools could not care less about podcasters. And that is another thing.
Yeah.
I just got to get my weekly dig in on Yeti. Sorry. Carry on.
I think that Studio One might even have like a template for podcasting.
Cool. That's awesome.
I think it may.
Which Logic does as well, but I don't use it. I don't use that template.
There are the Zoom interfaces and like Steinberg Zoom recorders usually come with Cubase.
That is one of the clunkiest ones in my opinion.
It's still
tough.
Functional.
Yes, but it does not make sense.
If you have nothing else, you know what? I was going to say if you have nothing else, it's a place to get started. But you know what? If you want to have a good time doing this, you got to have something that's going to work out.
Yes.
Do not let the gear be the reason you stop, or the software be a reason you stop. There's definitely cool stuff out there that can make your life easier. It's not worth quitting over a couple $100 if you've already bought a couple $100 worth of stuff. Just do it, and everything, you find that thing that makes sense to you, and it all works out.
Yes,
because it does not need to be rocket science.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be. I rescind my previous statement. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, and I think PreSonus, it's interesting that they have that template, and I suspect they'll try to grow on that more, because like I randomly posted on, Instagram one day, like my, One Love massive coffee mug in front of the board. And I was like, oh, another day at the podcast studio. And they hit me up and they did an interview with me about my podcast studio, and they put it on their website. And I mean, it got I looked it up one day and it was like 40,000, it was a significant amount of traffic. So I appreciated that, you know what I mean? Because that was a total outreach from them. And I appreciated that they reached out to a woman in the industry to talk about podcasting. So it seems like they're more interested in that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of what you said, Adam. It's like you got to catch things up, right? And if that's not what they're really, really good at, that's going to be a heavier lift.
Well, they're not sleeping on it, I will say. In the last couple months, I have one right here that I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
Look at that natural
Transition.
segue,
Yes.
y'all.
Look at that. Presonus really is taking an eye to podcasting. So they have USB mixers, which are functional for podcasting. They make the Studio Light, like the baby version of what you used to have, Molly, the AR series, which are like your traditional USB mixers. But what's cool about them, as opposed to a lot of people like to use a USB mixer because it's easier. You can get a lot of channels and they're affordable. I know Marcus is shaking his head, but people use them. People use them for better or for worse. But most USB mixers will just send a stereo feed to the computer and not multitrack. And we've talked about it before, but multitracking is recording each one of our voices separately so that we can edit and do what we need to. If one of us sounds too quiet or too loud or whatever, you can fix it. Most USB mixers, Mackie mixers, Yamaha mixers, MG series mixers, Alesis mixers or Behringer mixers or whatever, will only send out the mixed file, the final, whatever your knobs are set at, that's what's going to the computer. Presonus multitracks to the computer. So it's basically like you have an audio interface built into the mixer, so you can still run it and have the familiar EQs and stuff like that. But whatever you have plugged into the inputs goes straight to the computer. Super cool. Not the most popular, but they're cool. And they have Bluetooth channel and they do some cool stuff, so they're cool. So this is the Presonus PD70, a very familiar looking microphone. Looks pretty similar to what both of you have
For
on your
those
desk.
listening and not watching the video, what does it look like?
Oh, true. We've talked about that also. I'll do better. So the PD70 really is going right after the SM7B in a lot of ways. It's got it comes with the windscreen, metal, super heavy, like overbuilt metal chassis. Like this thing weighs a ton, which is really cool. Like that's why people like the pod mic too. Like it's really overbuilt. Like it's not a toy. Like this is like serious. Like you feel cool holding this thing. It's got the cool integrated mic mount. So it's center mounted. It can be mounted on a desktop stand and look cool. It can be mounted on a boom arm and look cool. And looking cool is important. Video is important. So having it look right is important. But you take the windscreen off, it looks just like an SM7B. If you take the windscreen off an SM7B, it pretty much looks like this. But it's basically an end-fire dynamic microphone, much like what both of you are using. So it's got that kind of broadcast look. It's dynamic, so it's going to reject kind of the unwanted sounds from around you. It's going to have that. Let's listen to it because it sounds a little bit different from an SM7B, and I think this is actually going to be one of the cooler comparisons because we have Marcus on an SM7B, Molly on an MV7.
Yes.
And then we got Presonus clone PD70.
PD7. They even use a 7 in the name.
They're like, hey,
They
name
sure do.
recognition.
They sure do.
Oh.
So this is the PD70.
Whoa.
Nice.
It sounds good. It sounds clear. I think it has like a clearer, more top end than an SM7B.
It has a presence boost, and I have my presence boost or my high boost enabled on my SM7B, and yours even has more presence than mine does.
So there are no switches on the PD70. It is what it is. It sounds like what it sounds like. It's got pretty good rejection, which is cool.
Is it XLR only?
XLR only. The advertised price is $129.
What?
Which is really cool.
Solid
That's great.
price, man.
You can buy 3 PD70s for the price of one SM7.
Yeah.
So if you're getting started, you want something that's pretty banging, looks the part, sounds great. And I think I talked to a lot of people about, you got to have the right gear to make an SM7B sound right.
Yeah.
Out the box, it ain't going to, sing the way it should. The cool thing about a PD70 is that it intelligibility, right, comes from the higher frequencies. It comes from the top end.
Yes.
And you can have all the bottom end depth in the world, but that ain't going to count for anything if people can't understand what you're saying. And that comes from that top end clarity. So a mic like this, while it might not have like the same deep presence as an SM7B or even an MV7, it's still got the part that's most important, which is the intelligibility. When you're listening to this on AirPods, you're listening to this in your car, you're going to understand. People are going to understand you. You're going to be heard. And that's, at one point or another, that's the most important.
Mm-hmm.
As you evolve and you grow into podcasting and you want to invest more and you want to really have the sound that like defines, the broadcasting world, and you want to go with an SM7B, there's a reason for it.
Yep.
But if you want to just get started and jump into it, PD70 is like a monstrous, great tool, sounds great, and like super affordable.
I think it sounds great. I mean,
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely better than your headset, but
it's not saying much.
Yeah, it's a pretty low bar.
I would be interested to compare it to the is it the pod mic, the Rode $100?
Yes. I will finally have pod mics in by next week. I will steal one away and we can do a big old mic shootout.
Cool.
Yeah, the great microphone shootout of 2021, because we did one in 2020. Yeah, man. So yeah, well, that's interesting. What you said about the SM7B. It's like, that is such a, like, I have a really hard time getting that microphone to sound good. Like, it's on my mantle. It's literally right there. Boop. And
big knowledge drop about to happen.
Clearly not.
Totally lost you there for a second.
We lost
you. Okay, so yeah, my SM7B, it's right there on the mantle, right there. Dink, not plugged in, because literally that is it. Because this is an easier mic to use, because when I plugged in the SM7B to the to my Zoom mixer, it didn't really give it the boost. I plugged it into the Rodecaster. I really needed a cloud lifter, and I just felt like I needed more technical skills to dial it in. And I just really wanted something, which is a cool product for sure, right? But it's just like, from somebody, who hasn't, I've spent a lot of money on equipment, but we'll just pretend that I haven't, right? Like, you're talking about buying an interface, you're talking about buying a microphone. Now you got to buy a cloud lifter. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, I've spent like $1,000, man. And like, you know what I mean? And now and then if I don't have it dialed in right. So it's not a bad deal, but if you're not as comfortable with that, right? Like, if that's not really your lane, and then a lot of people are doing stuff on Zoom or however they're recording their podcast, but they're not necessarily listening to themselves. I think that's one of the downfalls of a lot of like, like you don't hear you don't have your own monitor. And so you can't tell what it sounds like until you hear the recording later. And so you can do a whole podcast thinking your sound is good, and then it's not. So that's kind of why I like the MV7, just because, I mean, it's like, it's idiot proof. You know what I mean?
It truly is. And it's quite a middle ground for the whole thing. I mean, it's a really great sounding microphone that does a lot. And I am not a fan of most USB microphones, but especially ones that are over, $150.
Yeah.
Totally.
That thing is worth all the money they're asking for it.
Yeah.
I think
it's setting a new standard for sure.
It is.
Although I will say the fact that when you load it up, it's automatically in automatic mode, which I guess is good for the people who are never going to download the app.
Right.
But I was on a LinkedIn thread, and some guy was like, some guy was like, well, the pop screen is garbage. And I was like, what does that sentence even mean? Like,
it's foam.
It's foam, dude. Like, I think you need to lower your expectations on foam, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like, what is First of all, I don't call Shore garbage. Not on my watch. Okay. I took offense to that. And it didn't make any damn sense. But and then somebody else made a comment about the sound. And I was like, well, have you guys downloaded the app? And they were like, no. And I was like, well, you got to download the app. And then I put the link to the Shore website, because it's also not intuitive. You immediately go to the app store and it's not there. Or it is, like me, like the first day when I did the video and I was like showing people how to use the app on my phone, which was not controlling the mic at all. And I was like, you hear the difference? But they probably did not hear the difference, because it wasn't working.
It's not as easy to find on their website, but I will say the auto level mode is what makes that mic cool.
Yes.
I think that, you can dial it in, but you run the risk of like totally doofing it up.
Dialing it out.
That auto level, you set it on far mode because who knows if you're going to get close or far to it. And you put it in dark mode because that's like the SM7B sound, and you just let it do its thing, and it's going to sound great.
Good.
I will say too, though, in the manual settings in it, it is actually unlike a lot of the other things that have settings, like even your DAW or DAW. That you're right, you can easily mess things up, but with that somehow with that MV7, even if you crank all of the settings to 11, it still actually does not sound terrible.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
wow.
did a
Harder
good
to
job
mess
in
up.
making it, really making it, idiot proof.
Yeah.
You can't mess it up. It's pretty cool. It's what a cool thing. What a cool thing to have that you can just make sure you sound good at all times.
And I do like the I like that it has this like, hang feature where you can put it on a boom arm, because that is really my biggest complaint is like, that video I made that like people don't know how to use their microphones, man. Like they keep them across the desk. They're super far from them. Even right now, Marcus probably thinks that my microphone is too far from my face and it's
No,
like
it's
2
good.
inches, but like it's, I could still be closer. Right. And like when you have a microphone on a stand, it makes it really hard because your laptop is right there. Like people have,
Yep.
it's a logistics issue with space on your desk. And so the boom arm I like because I can still type, I can still do things with my hands, and then if I talk with my hands and I tap the desk, it's not necessarily going to get absorbed into the microphone.
Definitely
Yeah.
not
And
as
then when
much
I'm-
as one that's sitting on the desk for sure.
Yeah, you can hear everything. And then, when I'm not using it, I can just push it out of my way. And then it
Yep.
becomes super functional. So that's my goal for 2021 is to get everybody set up with like a,
There's a
Just
lot
get
more
your
USB
desk set
microphones
up.
now that are making themselves available to be put on booms like that.
yeah.
The Rode NT USB Mini can
Yeah.
be put on a
Which is over
easily like integrated, like just like all of our
there.
mics here, like integrated mount that can mount straight to a boom
Mhm.
arm. $99, no settings at all. Cool microphone.
Yeah.
There's one that I'm interested in. I'm curious what you guys think, but
Oh.
I think that I'm gonna have to get a demo of this thing because I think when you look at the price, you're like, no way. But knowing this company, I think that it's probably worth every penny. Earthworks just came out with a USB microphone called the Icon,
Yes.
which I think they have one that comes on a desk stand that's $349 and one that comes on a boom arm for $499.
Bruh.
Maybe?
Earthworks
I
is
know.
serious stuff, though.
I know.
They're top of the
But
line.
You hear anything through an Earthworks microphone, and it's stunning.
Plus, they look cool as hell.
They do look cool. They do look cool. This thing looks like it's like cyberpunk, like it's really cool and like
Wow,
retro
I need to Google
metal.
this. I don't believe
It's cool. I'm gonna have to get my hands on one of these things because I bet this thing sings. I bet it sounds.
So for those who have not heard of Earthworks before, I first was familiar with them because they were the first company that really did reference microphones, which are the little tiny pencil condensers that you would see sound guys in like a stadium or a arena tuning their PA to, or
Real
in a
nerdy
recording
stuff.
studio. Yeah, it's like super flat,
Super nerd stuff.
like high end, and they're not cheap. They are top of the line.
And the cool thing of they're really natural. They are the flattest, most natural sounding microphones there are. As a result, if you're using them live, like they don't really feedback because there's no frequency that kind of spikes. Like they just are magnificent.
I don't
Ain't
like
cheap.
I don't like the looks of it.
You don't?
It's a little too shiny, if you ask me.
We're gonna have to hear how this thing sounds because I think it's gonna rock. And I'm not one. I look at it, I'm like, that's a lot for a USB microphone. But now that I think about it, I bet it rocks.
Yeah.
Well,
And
you know what it looks like? It looks like a weed grinder, like from.
A little bit.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I mean, not that I've heard. I
Like
break
for
all
your
my
garden,
weed up by
the
hand. Yeah, well, I'd be curious to hear what that sounds like for sure. I mean, it's interesting to see. I don't know. I kind of like the black microphones. I like the sleek look of it, and maybe I'm just a little bit like, brainwashed by Joe Rogan, or like just like people buy the Yeti because they see other people using it. Maybe in my mind, this is just what a microphone, like even this Shure, I would have preferred it in black. You know what I mean? Although you would never see it. It would just blend in with my outfit every time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I guess there's some benefit, but yeah, I think maybe it's just a perception, but I would love to hear, what that mic actually sounds like.
We're going to have to go there.
Did you see that
Yeah.
EV came out with a black version of the RE20?
RE20 black. They sure did. Super cool. I think that was that mic definitely needed a color. That needed to change something.
Yeah.
And it's cooler than the RE320. I mean, they have the RE320.
I like the RE320.
It's a good mic.
But it is cool.
I think the
RE20 is
RE320 is similar to the PD70 in that it's brighter.
Yes.
It doesn't have that depth.
It's cheaper.
But the EV RE20, we say less expensive, more affordable.
Right.
Nothing is cheaper.
That's true.
Cheaper sounds bad. It's cheaper. The RE20 though is, I think, Molly's least favorite microphone. I think when I brought it to the thing, you're like, why does this microphone look?
Oh, that giant
bad?
phallic looking one? Yeah. I'm like, who's compensating for what? A man made this microphone. It's so big. And then when you put the foam on it, it covers people's entire faces.
That mic was not meant to be in your face.
It also doesn't need the foam.
It doesn't.
No.
Yeah,
but
the foam makes it like comical.
Yeah.
It's a great, of all the microphones, it really is one of the best. I think it sounds beautiful. It has like really great, if you're talking about clarity and intelligibility in a banging dynamic microphone, it doesn't get much better than an RE20.
It's the best dynamic microphone, period, in my opinion, for broadcast.
It does not have the sex appeal of an SM7B. It doesn't. People look at it and like, I want that microphone. It's what everyone uses.
Yeah.
And that's looks matter.
Yep.
But that RE20 sounds but that RE20 sounds good.
I didn't think I don't know. I thought it sounded okay, but it wasn't like, oh, that's, but I'm also going deaf, so that might be part of the problem.
I actually don't like it as much on my voice as the SM7B with the high boost on, but that's because I do like that clarity. And SM7B with the high boost on, to me, has just enough of the clarity with still the warmth, whereas the RE20 is so flat and it is dynamic, so the high end is rolled off still a little bit compared to condenser mic. So I definitely love my SM7B, and I would like an RE20, but I don't need one.
We should do a microphone episode. I have my Rodecaster. I have several microphones here that I can plug into.
Load them all up. We'll just plug everything in and go.
And we'll just do
mode.
like one at a time.
All right. So I have, and I actually a plug for my podcast Audio Lab, because this will probably come out after I've done the initial one, but I'm doing a microphone workshop. But I have all my microphones lined up back there. I've got a Heil PR40. I've got a
Dark Horse
Beta 87C,
nice,
which is also popular thanks to Marco Arment, which
what was the last one you said?
The Beta 87C. Sure.
Oh, the A and the C. Yep.
What else? SM58, of course.
Classic.
A Telefunken M80.
Also classic.
Which I like. An Audio-Technica
What about
BP40.
Do you use M82 ever?
Yes. I love the M82.
Also Dark Horse.
Yes. So anyway, we can nerd out.
You guys just went off a cliff right there.
We're just saying numbers at this point.
A brand, or is Dark Horse like
it's
a code word for super cool? Okay,
like cool, but like no one really uses them because they're not an SM7B or an MV7 or a Rode pod mic.
Dark Horse is actually a studio here in Nashville too, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Also true.
It's a cool name. Yeah,
but there are definitely some cool microphones out there that are worth considering. That it's in the world of podcasting, it's all you got. I mean, you got your content, and then you got your microphone, and you got the way you're going to record it.
Yep.
Yeah, so
it matters.
And you know what? Let's just talk about this for a second. Like, if you're a podcaster, or if you're presenting online, or you're showing up in a lot of meetings, and like you're the figurehead of that meeting, right? You don't even have to be a podcaster. Like if you're thinking about starting a podcast or you're just listening to this because you're friends with one of us, because that's probably who our first listeners are going to be, let's face it. But,
Hi, Mom.
Hey, my mom's not even going to watch this.
No, she's not.
Give her way too much credit. My mom. Anyway. But, you can still have a microphone, right? Like you can still show up better. You can still get a better camera. You can still get a better microphone. Like you don't have to be a podcaster, right? So like, I think all of this stuff matters. Now, if you plan on maybe doing an audiobook at some point in your career and you want to maybe record it yourself, then that's something to consider when you're looking at microphones. If you just want to, do better podcasts and be on other people's podcasts, you could go with something a little easier to use like that PreSonus. Oh, that's not a USB mic, but you've got some options. You know what I mean?
There's plenty of options.
Yep.
People expect that you will sound good, and you don't need to hide the microphone.
Yeah, stop doing that, y'all. You ever seen a microphone?
And please, for the love of
4
God,
feet away,
stop using AirPods, please.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's okay for
Yeah.
them to see the microphone. You look cool if you have a cool microphone.
Yeah, for sure.
Faux show.
So speaking of which, it's not a microphone, but I do have to show some love to Shure again because my homie Laura sent me these. Why can't it? Why isn't it? There we go. Can you guys see it? True wireless.
Ionic 215. That's their brand new.
They made Bluetooth adapters
and now
for all their classic headphones. They made a new set of headphones too, but 215s are classics.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're great. They're
SE215s.
I'm using
good earbuds
right now. And actually, it sounds pretty good because I've been losing my hearing and I have a lot of like tinnitus. And so my other earbuds were like making it hurt. Not my physical ear, but like it just hurt inside of my head. And so these don't hurt. And so I'm grateful for that. So shout out to Laura Davidson for hooking it up.
She's good people.
Representing the podcast industry, supporting women in the podcast industry. So
baby.
I appreciate that. Yeah, man.
Let us know though, like for listeners, let us know what you think of what we're talking about. Software, microphones, all that stuff. We want to hear what your opinions are too, so we can talk about it.
We'll pull it all out of the box. We'll mess with all of it.
Because I have a lot more to say about the software too. Like I could go on for multiple episodes on software for sure.
We'll go real deep. Maybe what we should do is we could field questions from people, right? Like, hey, I can't get rid of this hissing noise or, right? Like maybe a particular thing and you could walk us through how to fix different things every week, like maybe one thing or.
That'd be awesome.
I think that would be super cool. And then we're definitely going to have Shure on here. We're going to have the Riverside FM people on. They're super excited to come on the show. Cool. And Bryan Barletta from the Sounds Profitable said he would love to be a guest on the show so we can really dig into this IAB stuff. So nice. We've got some good guests coming up, man. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. But we should plan the Great Microphone Shootout of 2021. I've got an AKG condenser mic. I've got a couple USB mics. I got the SM58, the SM7B, the
loaded up
mic.
Yeah, I got the shitty lapel mic.
I want to hear it though. A lot of people are using those, and I want to compare it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna do like yoga videos or cooking videos or anything where you're not like right in front of a microphone, you should get a lapel mic. But on that note, we love Riverside FM. And actually, I'm really excited about having an enterprise account with them because I think it's important to support small businesses and people that are making strides to make things better. And Riverside FM is a pretty awesome program that I'm sure has some glitches and things to work out, just like all of us. All right. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, people, humans, dogs, animals, however you identify, thank you for tuning in to the podcast club. We will see you again next week. If you found this content valuable, please consider sharing it. Leave us comments, questions. Let us know what's up, man. And we'll see you guys next time.